Morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock. We're just waiting for a few people to join us on the attendees. So we'll give people a moment to log in and welcome to our annual showcase event, the new Next Chapter. I'm joined by Tracy Lancaster, who you should be able to see on your screens. I just wanted to go through some of the technical stuff just in case you're not familiar. There is a chat function. Although a number of you have sent questions in advance of the meeting, so we'll be addressing those questions later on. You are able to raise your hand and if to speak later on, and an opportunity for me to let you in if the need arises. And also for anybody who's on this webinar, we'll be emailing afterwards all the slides along with the paperwork, so you've got that after the event. So yeah, raise your hand, join in the chat, and obviously things are on social media as well this morning. Kieran Chappell there just testing the raising the hand works. We're well up to the numbers are going up, so we're going to give it one more minute for people to come in, and then I'm going to hand over to Tracy to welcome you. And we're aiming for about 40 minutes, and I'm making sure there's a time for questions at the end. So just letting these few people come in, and then we'll start. Okay, yeah, we've got a number of people just started clicking in then and have made it. Good morning. We've got over 71 people, 72, keeps going up. We had 100 registered. So really pleased that you've taken time out this morning to listen to this webinar, the new Next Chapter, just to give an update on LeedsBID and what we're up to. I'm going to hand over to Tracy Lancaster, our new chair, to welcome you to this morning. And you'll be hearing from me a little later on. Tracy, good morning.
Morning, Andrew. Just coming off mute, doing that thing that has been foxing us all for the last 8 months. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. It's literally a pleasure and an honour to be sitting here as the newly appointed chair of the LeedsBID. I'm Tracy Lancaster. I'm a Deputy Vice Chancellor at Leeds Beckett University, and only took up the chair quite recently at the start of the autumn. I'd really like to start by saying a huge thank you to our outgoing chair, Prue Lumley, who has done a really inspiring job of chairing the LeedsBID through its first term. Thank you to Prue for all her support of Andrew and the team, and for so diligently fulfilling this role on behalf of the city. Everybody benefits from the work of the BID, and therefore this is an important role. Prue was also a founding member of the steering group back in 2014, before the BID started formally, and has championed the BID to its second term. Thank you again. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the following board members who've stepped down and who have also served the BID during its first term. That's Helen Green, Director of Property at TCS, James Prince, Branch Manager at John Lewis, Wayne Topley, former General Manager of the Queen's Hotel, and of course Diane Cheeseborough. Thank you all again for your support and commitment to LeedsBID. I know for those of you who are still in the city, you'll continue to keep an eye on our progress of the BID over the coming years. All board directors are unremunerated roles, and we appointed Brewster and Partners recruitment specialists to independently help us refresh the board for our second term, which is the period 2020 to 2025. You may recall that about 12 months ago, the LeedsBID received an outstanding 94% positive endorsement for a second term. And this endorsement will lead to £14 million being invested back into our city centre. Brewster and Partners looked at the skills represented on our existing board and advertised widely for new directors. We received over 100 applications and were delighted with the level of engagement and interest from a range of business communities. Today, I'm delighted not only to announce formally the appointment of myself as chair, voted for by the board, but I'd also like to introduce the newly recruited board members. A huge welcome to Paul Ellison, Managing Director of the Yorkshire Design Group, Joe Coburn, General Manager at Victoria Leeds, Katie O'Hara, Director of Sales, Interstate Hotel and Resorts, Robin Hawkes, Executive Director and Joint Chief Executive of Leeds Playhouse, Jane Brodie, Senior Human Resources Business Partner for Equifax UK. I would also like to thank the ongoing support of the following board directors, many of whom will already be familiar to you. Sandy Needham, Chief Executive of the Chamber of Commerce, Jen Mitchell, General Manager of the First Direct Arena, David Madison, General Manager of Trinity Leeds, Sarah Deere, Managing Partner at Elmwood, Al Garthwaite, Councillor with Leeds City Council, Sam Perry, Commercial Director at the NatWest, and also Andrew Latchmore, who has been Vice Chair but will step down as a director but remain in attendance as an advisor to the board for the next 12 months as our new board members settle in. I would personally like to take this opportunity to thank Andrew and all of those mentioned for their continued support, dedication, wisdom and expertise that they bring to the table. Through this recruitment process, a number of people who were unsuccessful have generously agreed to get involved in other ways, either through our working groups or supporting particular projects. Thank you all again. We have been pleased with the variety and level of engagement from all parts of the business community. COVID-19 has certainly thrown us a curved ball as we started our next chapter in April 2020. The timing couldn't have been more challenging. In our business plan, clearly, we had no idea that this was around the corner. But bids, by their very nature, are nimble and responsive in meeting current unprecedented challenges. Indeed, nationally, excuse me, all 320 bids have been well placed to respond to the challenge in their role in supporting our towns and cities. And this has been recognised by local civic leaders and the government. I'll shortly hand back to Andrew, not only to look back on year 5 and the finances of the LeedsBID, but I've also asked him to update on the immediate measures that we have taken to support businesses during the first lockdown and how we will adapt to the new next chapter and what plans we have now put in place looking ahead to the next 6 months and beyond. LeedsBID would not be able to carry out all that it does without the support of the levy-paying businesses in the city. This funding enables projects and initiatives to happen, which simply would not if the bid wasn't there. I've also been amazed by the amount of in-kind support we receive from partners across the city. Thank you for this generous support. I'll now hand back over to Andrew, and then at the end, we'll respond to questions sent in advance of the meetings. Andrew.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And I'm going to go through these key points. At the end of term 1, as Tracy said, just to give an update as we came to the end of our first 5-year term and just to go through some of the finances of that, to look at the new next chapter. We had a business plan. And as Tracy said, COVID came along and we had to recalibrate, reevaluate, and I'll come on to some of the changes that we've made in order to respond to you as levy payers on this call. And somebody's putting in the chat how many people. There's 8 people on now. So welcome to all of you. And for those of you who are a little bit late, thank you for joining us. We welcome you this morning. And then we'll talk about collaboration in a crisis, talk about recovery, and then questions. But the first point of what I want to address is coming to the end of our first term, which was finishing on the 31st of March 2020. On the right, you'll see a graphic, our year in review, 2019-2020. We'll email you all a copy of this. It will be on our website as well. And that details not only what happened in year 5, but looking back in terms of what the bid has achieved. And really, as Tracy has said, the fantastic endorsement that we received in October last year when we went back to the businesses to say, what do you want us to carry on doing? What do you want us to change? And that endorsement was phenomenal. So that year in review document will be available to you after this meeting. Along with that, we have our audited accounts and financial statements, and these will be, again, circulated to you and on our website. And over the last 5 years, we've appointed Armstrong Watson, grateful to them who've done an audit on our accounts. And I just want to make the following observations in terms of some of the sort of financial highlights. Over the 5 years, our average collection rate of the levy has been 99%. That's phenomenal. That shows the endorsement from the businesses and your support of us to enable us, as Tracy said, to do the projects we've been able to achieve over the last 5 years. All our audits have been clean and free from material misstatement, confirmed compliance with legislation, and did not identify any material findings on performance objectives. That's really, really important. It's not a mandatory requirement for us to have an audit, but we do it because we want to show transparency in all our work and how we're spending our money, both the levy that we get in, but also the in-kind support and the voluntary contributions we receive, which have been significant. Our overheads for the first 5 years have remained low at 12.5%. And that is down to the fact that the in-kind support that Tracy mentioned, the fact that we get support for office accommodation from Land Securities and Network Rail and Hammerson's and the Merion Centre. Without that support, our overheads would be a lot higher. And that enables us to put more money to the coalface, to project delivery, which is really, really important. And going into the new term, as we finish the first 5 years, we wanted to ensure that we didn't carry a large surplus forward, because that would be wrong. We wanted to make sure we'd spent the money on the projects that we said we were going to do within our business plan. So as we came into March, we were running on empty, and rightly so, not knowing that COVID was round the corner. And in addition to the in-kind support, I have to mention the board directors, and welcome to the new board directors, and thank you to the ones that are stepping down for their hard work, and for the existing ones who are staying on to support. And we're really grateful. And if we add all the hours of our board directors and our steering groups and our working groups, it comes to over 1,000 hours of in-kind support that just makes it really, really important that these people from different sectors come together, sit around a board table, maybe wouldn't ordinarily sit around a board table together, some of whom are competitors, but they work together wonderfully for the collective good of the city. And that's really, really important. The other thing to point out, which you'll see in the year in review document, is that in year 5, we exceeded our business plan expectation in terms of other income. So we get the levy in, and for every pound of levy, it's about 20p more of additional income that we get, both in kind and physical cash, which is really important to enable us to do other projects. So there's some of the highlights from our first term. The other thing to say is that the BID Foundation, of which we're part of, and I see this morning Dr. Grail is on the webinar as well, who's led the work on the BID Foundation standards. And LeedsBID has been part of that project to make sure that there is an accredited benchmark of how a bid should be operating nationally. There's 320 business improvement districts in the United Kingdom, and we were pleased to be part of that accreditation project and making sure we meet the 11 industry standards of how a bid should operate. And further news of that will come out shortly. So there we were, gearing up for term 2. Levy bills had gone out well before government lockdown was upon us in March, and then COVID hit. And we had to take some immediate measures. And so what I'm going to talk about in this slide is talk about the measures that we had to take as LeedsBID, and then I'm going to talk about the measures that we had to take to support businesses in the city during this time. So the measures we had to take, we kept this office, the office where I am this morning, which is City Exchange. You probably can see in the background the Trinity and Trinity Church. In this office, as some of you will know, Ambition Leeds, where the training facility is. And we also have next door we support the police and their partners who operate out this office for the street support scheme in the city. And that's the street support is dealing with the homeless and vulnerable people on the street. So the first thing we did was keep this office open to enable that team to carry on operating. As a bid, we furloughed not all staff, but we furloughed 17 of our staff. And as I said earlier, levy collection was at a low at this time because we'd run into the new financial year with making sure our surplus had been spent. And we had to reevaluate our contracts and our commitments because the income was just not coming in because of the lockdown. Thankfully, the government gave all bids a grant towards our overheads, and we received a grant of £126,508.35, and that came through in June. That was allocated to local authorities to then distribute to their business improvement districts. So that enabled us to support our overheads during this difficult time. And then our thanks go to Santander, our banker, who helped us during this time. Because we didn't have the levy income, we then put in a CBIL loan to support us in terms of our cash flow. And the levy income, which some of you will be aware by law, is collected by the local authority. They're the collection agency, but no measures were introduced to reduce or give financial support to businesses to pay the levy. So the levy is still a legal requirement, but we recognise the fact that businesses were struggling at that time and still are. And therefore, we didn't put any further bills out, or we didn't go chasing down levy at that point, because it would have been inappropriate to do so because we're all in lockdown. So that CBIL loan that we got from Santander, and alongside that government loan, enabled us to carry on operating and supporting our levy payers through this very, very difficult time. Since then, I'm pleased to report we've gone on to collect over 74% of the levy for the financial year 2020 to 2021, which gives us a very stable foundation for our projects and events for what remains of 2020, but also helps us to prepare for 2021. And I'll come on to that in a little more detail later. 4 team members left the business and were not replaced, and staff members who were not on furlough took a 10% salary reduction, again to help cash flow during the difficult time. And the saving measures that through the board and through myself that we put in place saved over 100,000 on our wages bills, and the measures that I've put in place alongside the board, we're now a better place to weather further the storms of COVID, particularly in Q4, and maintain the activity in supporting businesses in the LeedsBID area. So yeah, it's been a difficult time for everyone. But what COVID has done is allowed collaboration in a time of crisis. What I've been wowed at is the fact that businesses have worked collectively together to support each other through very difficult times. And as Tracy said, bids by their very nature are nimble, they can respond quickly, they can refocus its efforts. We're not tied up in lots of bureaucracy, we can crack on quickly. And that's exactly what we had to do when the lockdown occurred, lockdown 1.0, if we're going to call it that. So things that we played a role in, key thing was pivotal role was communication. People were in chaos, there was lots of information flying around, and so we switched immediately to a weekly communication to our levy payers through our newsletter and then our social media feeds, and we established the People Helping People webinars, signposting support alongside the grants that were coming out the local authority, giving people support and helping at that very difficult time. Martin Dixon and the marketing team created the Welcome Back to Leeds portal, and that's still up there, and a number of you feeding into that, letting people know your current state of what you're open, what services you're providing. We had to go back to basics. People just needed to know what was going on in the city centre, what was open, what wasn't open, and that was really important. BIDS across the north had a meeting with the Cabinet Office in terms of their comms team, and recognised the role that BIDS played in terms of communicating what was coming out of government and how we could get that to businesses quickly. So we had that conference call with them and set up lines of communication to ensure that we were passing that information on as quickly as we possibly could. And the government recognising the role that BIDS played in this time of crisis was really important. Karen Butler, many of you will know, our head of operations and head of place. Karen established immediately the daily briefings in this room in Ambition Leeds. So bringing street teams together and people who were working to respond to the crisis. And those daily briefings have now been so successful that they've carried on. And again, out of a time of crisis, people collaborating and saying we should carry on doing this because the communication has been really, really good and we've worked together. And I think I've always said that as a BID, we're about the 5 letters of our city. It's about people collaborating, working together for collective good. And we've seen some of that during the crisis. And working with the local authority, and I see a number of you on the call this morning, so welcome. It's really been important we work collaboratively with our local authority, particularly in their plans. Mark Durham, who's chaired some of those meetings, John Ebo, about opening the city centre, and Yvonne, some of you will know Yvonne Kennedy, who led our Welcome Ambassador team. Yvonne was part of the team. We loaned her, one of our star strikers, we loaned her to the council to be able to support the street marshals that were set up when non-essential retail was opened back on the 15th of June. And then we put the Ranger team back in action after lockdown, both to ensure the cleanliness of the city centre and the safety of the city centre, which is really, really important. Again, collaboration in a time of crisis. We've had those weekly retailer meetings with the centre managers in the city centre, with the police and the council, sharing, supporting, helping. I've been amazed at at what's gone on in those meetings. Joe and David very much involved in that, in terms of people sharing best practice, people working together, and the BID being that glue to connect people and to pass on information. We all got behind the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, which was hugely successful. And in the summer, we had a sort of glimpse of normality, didn't we? It seems a long time ago, but we supported the Child Friendly Day in the city centre. And who can forget the fact that after 16 years, Leeds United finally made it into the Premiership, and working with Banana Kick. And again, I see a few Banana Kick names on the call who were part of the Leeds United Trail that was around the city centre to celebrate that in a much more subdued way, I have to say, than what would be normally the case had we not had COVID. But again, we were able to do a number of smaller summer projects. But during this time, we've had to, again, through collaboration, we've had to recalibrate the projects. We've had to continue to rethink major projects, how we might bring them back in 2021, particularly some of the BID money that we've ring-fenced for events. We want to make sure we're prepared for 2021 when government restrictions allow us to then continue as normal. But in the meantime, recalibrating some of those projects have been really, really important. So thank you to those who've been involved with that. And there's been some stressful times as we've been thinking about which projects to put on the back burner, which projects to take forward. Diane Wainwright, many of you will know Diane, who oversees the operation here at City Exchange. She's been great at ensuring this office space is kept open, both for the street teams during lockdown and when essential retail reopened. A number of retailers didn't have that technical Zoom and technology that they needed to operate. So these rooms have been used by retailers as part of the recovery. And I'll come on to that a little bit later on as well. And finally, we've lobbied national government to ensure, but both locally and nationally, to make sure that the discretionary grants, very important, the discretionary grants, the second tranche of money that came through, that some businesses were contacting the BID saying they fell through between the gaps, and we wanted to make sure that the discretionary grants got to the right people. So again, working with the local authority to highlight some of those businesses who needed support. And again, the grants that are now out there to support the second lockdown, if you go on the council's webpage under coronavirus and business support, that's being updated daily and there's expressions of support. So make sure you log on to that to get the latest updates. And again, if it's all a bit hazy and as we are bombarded with information, happy to guide people through that and support them at this time. So a lot of things that have been done in collaboration. I'm cantering on to now go to the recovery. What's the immediate? What's now? And a number of you put questions in advance of the meeting, say, what about between now and Christmas? Well, we don't know, do we? We were going from tier 2 to tier 3, and then we went into national lockdown 4 days after we'd gone into tier 3. It's been a crazy ride, hasn't it, over the last 2 weeks, and hugely stressful for people in the recent weeks, particularly when Christmas is such an important trading time. One of my favorite quotes that has been throughout this pandemic is, although we're all in the same COVID storm, we're not all in the same boat. And some businesses are in a different boat and they're struggling more than others. And that is certainly coming to the fore at the moment. So we are preparing with the retailers and with the property landlords for some sort of Christmas, if we are allowed to continue after the 2nd of December. Obviously, it would be more modified, slightly different to what we would experience normally. We're preparing the best we can to make the city sparkle, and Karen's been doing some work on Briggate with retailers and businesses there to put a new install on Briggate, which we've invested in for future years, so not just for this year. And that's a new installation, which is really good, illuminating Briggate and working, and also through the work Martin's doing with the Welcome to Leeds, working with media partners to prepare for sensible messaging to help people shop before Christmas if we can. And I think that's really, really important, the messaging, working with all organisations in the city, because if there is, what we witnessed last week prior to lockdown was a real peak in footfall in the city centre, really a bit of a mad rush, if we're honest, before the lockdown. So what we don't want to do is see that happening before Christmas. It needs to be managed in a sensible way. We've teamed up with World Host. So a number of you today will be in your kitchens or at home in your office. Some of you may be in your office because you're essential to keeping things going. But we've teamed up with World Host to do free COVID-19 customer service training courses. So if we can, if you want to benefit from that, as I say, they're free. Over 120 businesses have already signed up for that, and contact Diane and take advantage of that while there is some downtime for certain individuals. And the Ranger team in the city centre has been essential in terms of support. They continue to deep clean during this lockdown. Briggate is sparkling, King Edward Street is really, really clean. They've just done that. They're also providing a physical presence in the city centre. So if you're not able to get to your business and you want to make sure that it's still there and it's still okay, the Rangers are there, they'll look in, they'll pop in, they'll have a look, and they'll clean around your premises. And I think that's really, really important. And as I said, Ambition Leeds here is available for any businesses to use our tech here, the space, and the courses that we're putting on through Leeds Boost, including the working from home toolkit, which I'm going to be on with Simon McCaskill. Some of you will know Simon. And these Leeds Boost courses, again, free for levy payers. After Christmas, we're supporting the ongoing ambitions of the city. LeedsBID will continue at pace to deliver on all its core projects to animate and improve Leeds City Centre for everyone. So we've got to sort of recalibrate our plans. Responding to levy payers, we're proposing that we repurpose Ambition Leeds to support the recovery effort in the city. So we're going to have a range of services in this operation here which will be launched in January, again, to support levy-paying businesses in the city, or support all businesses in the city that are going through a tough time, whether that's through the work that we've done on recruitment, through training, or just needing a space here in order to get yourself back on your feet. This place will be available for that, and more will come on that in January. Welcome back to Leeds website will be essential to us, become even more prominent as a place marketing tool to let consumers know what's happening in Leeds. We've really had to get back to those basics of what BIDS were all about. BIDS were set up initially in America to address that sort of clean, safe and friendly agenda. And that's never been as more important as it is now, as people need that confidence when lockdown is eased to come back into the city centre. They want the information, where can they go, with all the restrictions and all the complications that COVID has thrown at us. So the Welcome Back to Leeds web portal will be instrumental. We're planning ahead, again, with the retailers to consider a Jurassic Trail 2. We're already working on that because that was so successful, and along with Leeds International Festival and other events that we do in the city centre. So we've been mindful of what businesses are saying to us, how important those events are, but when we can do them, let's be prepared. Let's use this time to plan. And then finally, to use this time to plan ahead, considering a waterfront bid, which is in our business plan, working with businesses who are championing in thinking about this area in the South Bank. And Tracy's mentioned it earlier, a number of businesses who want to get involved, who aren't on the board and want to get involved in some of the steering groups in terms of some of the thinking around expanding the bid area to include the waterfront in the South Bank area of the city. So again, using this time to plan ahead and think about what the future. And finally, what businesses have said to us, continue with our street teams in line with our business plan. So the Rangers, we've expanded some of their equipment in response to levy payers, and also considering a new welcome team. So that's me done. But I want to just remind people, these are our priorities that are in our business plan. These are the things we want to address. And obviously what we've had to do is recalibrate. So the animation piece, we've not been able to do as much as we would like to have done, but the supportive piece in terms of supporting levy payers through training, through the Ranger team, through the street teams, we've done that. So that's it from me for now. I'm going to ask Tracy if she would mind unmuting. I'm going to pause for a drink. I think we're on time. Yeah, 9:32. The year review is purposefully designed like it has because things have had to be ripped up and put back together. And that's what COVID has thrown at us. But a number of you put questions to us in advance. And
there's a couple of questions in the chat as well, Andrew.
Thank you very much. I will try and navigate the two. Shall we go for the questions that people put in advance first, and then I'll come to the questions in the chat. So quite a number of people were saying, what can the bid do to ensure it delivers value to its members, reflecting retail and the transport challenges? How will we cope beyond COVID? Nobody has a crystal ball. Leeds City Centre was beginning to look amazing with its new buildings and ventures. How will this continue after coronavirus? And what do you think the city centre's major challenges between now and Christmas? I think, I don't know about you, Tracy, I think some of those we have addressed in terms of particularly the last one, the challenge of between now and Christmas, is that businesses are really sort of frustrated that they can't operate like they would normally. We can't have a normal Christmas, and for certain retailers, over a third to a fifth of their income is generated at this time for booksellers and people, independents, that, you know, a large portion of their trade is taken at Christmas. So it's really frustrating that they can't operate the way they can. I think it's important that businesses make sure they get all the support they can through the grants and schemes that are available. And I think sometimes a bit of hand-holding there is required to support businesses through that. But it will be a challenge for particularly the retail and hospitality, and the fact that transport is not quite where it wants to be because of COVID. But we're seeing obviously car park occupancy prior to lockdown rising in the city centre as people choose to come by car. So we've got some challenges ahead. Tracy, any comments from you on that?
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier on, Andrew, about bids being nimble and the importance of discussion with our levy payers and those beyond the levy paying community as well, of trying to keep those conversations going to identify where the bid can play the most effective role. So it won't be a Christmas like we've had before. I mean, I'm part of a university. Today's challenge is trying to get students home by the 9th of December. And as part of that, what is the welcome that we will then give those students back after January that may help make up some of that ground in terms of lost sales and so on in that run up to Christmas. It's trying to think on our feet throughout the course of the year and activate different markets, different communities that can help us with recovering some of that commercial activity over the course of the next 18 months, because those peaks in sales, whether you're a hotel, whether you're retail, whether you're in hospitality, may come at a very different time to the way in which they've fallen in previous years. Our communications within the bid and then to those markets, I think, are going to be absolutely critical in managing that.
David Lum asked a question about congratulations on your successful first term. Is it now time to review your area of activity that excludes approximately 1/3 of Leeds city centre? Referring to the South Bank, and hopefully we've addressed that, because in our business plan 2019 that was voted for by 94% of businesses voted in favour. David, one of the things in there is to address the South Bank and consider a bid in that area. So I would welcome your thoughts on that, David, maybe through our steering groups that Vicky Freestone is going to set up to do some of that thinking around the South Bank and how we can support that area of the city, because you're right, it's going to be vitally important over the coming years. So it's on the radar. What is the bid doing to meet climate carbon targets was one of the questions that was sent in advance of the meeting. I can say in terms of the bid, there's three things that I can pick up on there. One is all our vehicles are now green and electric in the city centre. So you might have seen those little blue trucks that go around the city centre. They're all green and pioneering. We've worked with a supplier to adapt them in order to the technologies that they have on there. So that they're really quite leading edge. Those vehicles. We work with Forge Recycling. We've done a scheme to improve the recycling, excuse me, of collection in waste collection in the city centre. And businesses can save money through that, but there's also some aesthetic issues around making sure waste is collected in a better way so our city centre doesn't look a mess, and Forge have done a fantastic job of that. We've also worked with Yorkshire Energy in terms of buying green energy for businesses. So they're accredited in terms of their green credentials, and a number of businesses have switched to that. And then finally, within our business plan 2019, which for 2020 to 2025, we talked about opportunities for green building projects, and Karen Butler and Paul Ellison, who's now joined the board, in terms of some of that pop-up activity and greening that's taken place in our first term. How can we extend that? How can we green some of our buildings in the city? Because sometimes our landscapes in Leeds do not lend itself to greening, and how can we support some of that pop-up activity? So yes, we want to support the city centre in its efforts for meeting climate targets. Any comments from you, Tracy, on that one?
No, I think you've covered that perfectly well. The
next one for you, Tracy, it says, what is the one thing you wish you could accomplish above all others? Maybe as a
I'm
bid,
assuming that's in relation to the bid, yeah.
As a bid, or
not personally. I think it's a really good question, and I'm kind of referring back to the interviews that we had for the new board members, because one of our new board members talked about the reshaping of the city centre, which was a really interesting concept, because it kind of builds on the challenge and the and in commercial terms, I don't think it's too strong to say that the tragedy of coronavirus and the way in which that will have a lasting impact on the composition of our city centre, but takes it forward beyond the current pandemic to how we may rebuild, so support those businesses that have come through the pandemic, but also look at the way in which the city centre may change and flourish differently in the future. And I think for me that was a really, it gave me real pause for thought, because again, I refer to my own sector. You know, what we are learning from the way in which we're having to operate during the pandemic is that there are changes to our operating model that actually we will not want to give up at the end of this period. It has shown us different ways of operating that work better for the communities that we're working with. And so if I can do one thing, and of course, you do nothing alone. All of this is about the collaboration that is so important on the board, but so important within the city centre and through our levy payers and beyond. It is about making sure that our city centre not only recovers from this period of such change, but defines a future for itself, which means that we flourish. And I think we've got the grit, I think we've got the imagination, I think we've got the determination in Leeds to make that happen.
And the resilience.
And the resilience, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And that's been really evident.
Yeah.
And actually that collaboration, you said it yourself, Andrew, over this period, it's been really impressive, the way in which competitors have come together, the way in which people have worked together and rethought the business model, the way in which they've rethought the way in which our city centre can operate in the future. Very
good. I've got 3 questions left for people sent in advance, and then we'll come on to the chat. Someone was asking, LeedsBID works a lot through live events. Obviously, we work with Jen at the arena, to the O2 and other venues across the city. What will you do to back the events industry now? And I think we have done that through the BID Foundation and lobbying and some of those grants and things that we supported, but also kickstart it later. And I think, as I said in my talk, we recognise that a large portion of our levy is for animation, and so we're going to plan for later to use that money when we're allowed to operate in that way. So absolutely, we've not forgotten those levy payers who are in that industry, and it's back to my COVID storm and boat comment earlier, that sector will need support later on, and we need to make sure we help them. Then there's a question about how can LeedsBID facilitate cooperation and cross-learning between corporations, SMEs and independents with Leeds? And I think so often it personally frustrates me that people talk about the corporates and the independents and creates divisions, when in this crisis we need to work together, and we're certainly doing that through ambition here. We're going to repurpose ambition, as I say, in January as an area for recovery, and that will be open for whether independents or corporations want to use our facilities. So I think it's important we work together, that we cross-pollinate, that we cross-learn, and that we realise that together that we're going to be stronger. I don't know any comments for you or Tracy on that, but I know independents are really important to the city, as are the big names.
And again, I think it's about marshalling all of our resources as well, isn't it? We don't just turn up at the bid as individuals. We turn up with with an audience or with a community or with a staff and so on, and being able to marshal those people within our own organisations to be able to cross-pollinate, to be able to feed the events industry, to be able to sort of embrace the hospitality industry when we're able to use that again. I think it's being able to see ourselves as being the sharp point of organisations and being able to come together to help direct those communities in those areas where we're going to need them to be commercially active once we're out of lockdown and once we're back to some form of normality.
Thank you for that, Tracy. And then final question that was sent in advance is how can we encourage people to come back into the city centre of Leeds in view of the pandemic? Well, in view of the fact that the pandemic is encouraging a lot of people to shop online. And I was chatting this through with Laura Collins from the YEP, who've set up this campaign of support local. We've obviously, I've mentioned earlier, the Welcome Back to Leeds campaign that we've done. It's almost like you've fallen off a bike and you've got to ride it again. And people will need that confidence to come back into the city centre. Businesses have invested so much in making their premises COVID safe and all the measures that have been put in place with hand gels and stickers on the floor and all that good work that's done. I think we need to collectively encourage people back into the city centre in a safe and managed way. And I think that's going to be a challenge. And obviously it's easy to stay at home and click on your Amazon app. But you've got to realize that coffee shop that you used to buy from, or that independent bookshop, let's try and think about them as we lead up to Christmas. It might be a bit harder in order for them to navigate. And I think a lot of them have been very savvy. We've seen it in the second lockdown in terms of the click and collect and some of the services and online services that they've put in place, that businesses have been a bit more prepared than they were the first time round. So yeah, I'd encourage us all that we all have a collective responsibility. We've got to use it or lose it. And we don't want to see a toothless high street when we come back out in the new year. I just want to pause at this point to mention one thing. LeedsBID wouldn't be able to achieve what it achieves without its staff. And I've mentioned a number of them this morning, but they've done a terrific job. And those who've been furloughed, but those of them back in action, those who weren't furloughed were actually taking on more workload than they could have imagined at the time in terms of responding to levy payers. So thank you to all the team for their support and their diligence and their commitment. It's been a tough time, but the BID team have been a good team, excellent team, working together for you. So if you need any support after hearing the webinar this morning, do get in touch with us if we can help you. That's what the BID is about. We have no agenda. We're not political. We're not for profit. We're here to support the businesses in the city centre. So thank you to the team. There's a few questions. We're slightly over time, but I think that's allowed. Is it, Tracy? We can go. Yep. 5 minutes. So Martin Patterson, thank you, Martin. Very glad to hear that LeedsBID continuing support with street outreach in relation to the homeless community on the streets. Are you part of the ongoing strategic discussions with Leeds City Council, NHS and third sector in sustaining the government's Everybody In initiative? Thanks to hotels as well for playing a major part, a role in terms of working together. There were a couple of hotels who were helping vulnerable people on the streets and accommodation. And yes is the answer to Martin's question, that Karen and myself have been in discussions with Paul Money and Simon Hodgson from the council in terms of the space here in City Exchange, how we can support some of the health charities as well that are working with the homeless in the city centre. So yeah, absolutely, we want to make sure that agenda is not forgotten, and working with those who are delivering solutions to support the homeless community in the city centre. So I hope that's answered that, Martin, in the brief time. But I'm personally not totally up to speed with the Everybody In initiative. So if there's a web link or something you'd like to share for everyone on the webinar, that will be useful, but more than happy to take a discussion offline. So that's that one. Vicky Freestone saying she'll get in touch with you, David. So hopefully that's good. And as it is a living wage week, and there is a group of working towards making Leeds a living wage, how might the BID support this? Linda Sims asked. Well, I was part of the panel with Living Wage with Bill Barton, who's on the call today, and we are a living wage employer, and we supported that campaign, and we've actually got that accreditation. So if there is some collateral, and I'll look to Bill for that, and others who have been involved, we're happy to support living wage. We have done in the past, and we do now. So thank you, Linda, for raising that. I think that's all the questions or thank you, David. So you have to be multitasking here, don't you? With all the stuff that's
eyes everywhere, Andrew.
I hope that's been useful. Obviously, final thoughts from Tracy. If there isn't any more comments, no one else is putting their hands up. The final thing for me to say is that the year in review document, you see the graphic that I've put on there, we'll send that to everyone. It'll also be online. There'll be certain things on social media as well. I am, again, thank you to the team. Really thank you to you as levy payers, because without your support, we couldn't do what we're doing. And your interaction, the fact that you're on this call today. Thank you so much for your support and involvement. And I think as we draw sort of to a close, I guess there is, we will get through this. I'm confident. I'm always a glass half full person, but it has been a marathon of a year for everybody. But I think collectively we will get through this, and Leeds will be stronger. So we remain positive, and please use the bid and its resources to help your business, or if you're the eyes and ears out there and you see a business struggling, and if we can help in any way, we need to work together, even more so at this time, to make sure that I was chatting the other day to indirectly, there was a trader in tears, and you sort of think people need help at this time. We need to be kind, we need to be supportive. People are going through tough times, and how we can work together is really important, that people come out the other side. We're going to have a few bruises and we're going to have a few scars, that's for sure. Tracy, final comments from you.
I think that sums it up, Andrew. What I was going to say was keep in touch. I think one of the challenges with how we're living at the moment is that all of that informal contact has kind of been removed from our lives. And actually, it's those chats on street corners, it's those chats that happen outside of meetings, where ideas and challenges can be voiced. And a lot of that is now something we actually have to actively work for. So absolutely, as the slide says, keep connected with LeedsBID. It's your thoughts and your ideas that will enable us as a bid to remain agile and make sure that we meet the needs of our city and of all the businesses that make our city the place that it is and will be again. So thank you to everybody for attending today. And I just wanted to just voice Andrew's support for the team as well. Again, thank you to them. They're a great team, and what I particularly wanted to thank them for was their good humour. You always go in and are met with a smile in the offices, and at the moment that makes a massive difference. So thank you to the team as well.
Absolutely. So that's it. We're slightly over. For those of you joining for the board after this, we'll give that 5 minutes for you to disconnect and connect again. Bill, absolutely, your comment there. We need to remain positive, and that's absolutely critical. And so great. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Wish you all a great day, and if we can support you in any way, do get in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.